Hello, friends. Surely you have repeatedly felt deceived when you heard about the official inflation figures in your country. Inflation from official statistical agencies usually causes us confusion. How can this be? Every day I go to the supermarket and see how everything is becoming more expensive by tens of percent, and they tell me the inflation figure of 3.4 or 5% per annum. But by my feelings it should be at least 10 or 15%. And some individual goods and services have become more expensive by 40 to 50% or even 2 times. I'm not blind. You can't fool me. Why is that? Do evil rulers want to deceive me, mislead me? Or do they have some special method for calculating this average inflation? Let's figure it out. The topic is very broad, difficult, but I will try to explain everything in simple words so that even the average person can understand everything. So, inflation is the process of depreciation of money and the most important indicator of the economic condition of the issuer of the currency, the country that we are assessing. I will not go into history now and tell you in detail about hyperinflation in different countries. For example, Germany in the 20s of the last century, when bread could cost 1 mark one day, and in a few days, hundreds of thousands of German marks. Or an example of huge inflation in Zimbabwe, which even forced this country at the beginning of the 21st century to officially switch to a foreign currency, the American dollar. So, the inflation rate is greatly influenced by the so-called economic expectations of people. There is even such a special term in economics, inflationary expectations. What is it? This is when people expect prices to rise, they take out more loans to buy goods for future use, as much as possible, in large quantities. And a new rise in prices provokes new expectations of price increases, new mistrust of people. And the so-called inflationary spiral is formed. Producers of goods and services are planning to increase prices for their products in order to compensate for costs. Excessive growth of money printing by central banks of countries, increase in wages for workers, all this provokes a general increase in prices and, ultimately, affects the inflation values. Thus, people's trust, the level of basic trust is a key indicator for ensuring financial stability. In my previous video, which was called, "Don't Put All Your Eggs in One Basket," I explained what the level of basic trust in society is, and how it affects our success in life, why it is important to trust each other. But let's get back to inflation. Its main cause is the growth of the money supply, emission, that is, the printing of money. In the modern paradigm of the economy, credit creates a new money supply. And people cannot increase the output of goods and services as quickly. Increased demand creates price growth, and the central bank, in order to curb lending, is forced to raise the discount rate to higher values. That's roughly how it works, friends. The higher the key rate, the tighter the monetary policy, the more expensive the loan, but the worse the business and economy develop. Lending itself increases the money supply. Of course, the central bank has other mechanisms to curb inflation, for example, reserves and some others. This is not what we are talking about now. It is important that you have a rough idea of the causes of inflation. This includes labor shortages, increased production costs, rising costs, various political events, and so on. There can be many, many reasons. And it is important that you, viewers of this channel, understand that you should not have illusions, seeing, for example, attractive high rates on deposits or bonds. You will have to pay for everything later, including in the form of inflation. Inflation is a kind of tax that absolutely everyone will pay. And when I talked about investing in income-generating real estate in the video, about the uniqueness of this instrument, I meant protection from inflation. There are very few such investment instruments that will allow you to simultaneously protect yourself from inflation and earn money. Even if the percentage of profit in the form of rent is small, it is still a plus, not a minus. I then gave a comparison with a cow that regularly gives its owner several buckets of milk. And at some point, it becomes unimportant how much this cow costs in nominal terms. What is important is that it regularly gives milk every day. A deposit of 5, 7, or even 10% per annum can never be compared with the size of dividends or the rent received for a property. In the first case, there is no protection from inflation and guarantees, but in the second, there is. In addition to raising the key rate, the central bank has other options, other complex mechanisms. For example, selling government bonds, that is, selling government debt receipts. This is what, for example, the Federal Reserve System in the USA has very effectively done and continues to do. This is a very effective measure to reduce inflation and control the money supply. Everything, as I have already said, in the modern economy is built exclusively on trust, and such an indicator as inflation, on people's expectations, on the level of basic trust, probably depends very much. No trust, expect high inflation. For example, today many believe that gold is of high value, is expensive, but its use in industry or jewelry is very limited. In fact, it is an almost useless metal for the economy, the value of which is provided only by centuries-old traditions of people, faith in value and rarity, which supports investment demand. Young people, from a different generation, today believe in special computer sequences of numbers, codes used, for example, in blockchain technology, believe in cryptocurrencies. And we are seeing an increase in quotes, since the number of cryptocurrencies, like gold, is limited, but there are advantages in the convenience of storage and transfer through crypto wallets. Technology based on people's trust. There are more people willing to buy cryptocurrency now than people willing to get rid of it. Which means the price is rising. If it is the other way around, the price will fall. Over the next 150 years, no more than 5% of the total amount of cryptocurrency can be mined using mining. There are many new people willing to do so because of the convenience of the technology, and those who already have cryptocurrency on their accounts are in no hurry to get rid of it. People's trust and expectations are key indicators of the modern economy. This is how it happened historically. People's values are changing. Once upon a time, in the 17th century in the Netherlands, tulip bulbs had a high price and their unique value for people was justified. But let's get back to inflation, to the main question of this video. Why do we think we are being deceived? Our perceived inflation is high, and the official inflation is much lower. Maybe the Statistics Committee has some secret mission, to calm the people down. Let's figure it out. Yes, for 2024, for example, the price of a pack of butter or a taxi service in the post-Soviet countries increased in price by about 20 to 30%, and the average inflation that we were told about was less than 10%, on average from 5% to 9%, no more. How is that possible? Is it a conspiracy? Are they trying to deceive us? No, friends, it's just that our psyche is constantly looking for reasons in conspiracy theories. Our brain is designed to find the most convenient reason. And it begins to seem to us that official statistics are just a mockery. But let's be honest. In the public domain on the websites of the National Bank or statistical agency that provides the data, there is a section, Inflation and Inflation Expectations, where there are quarterly materials on inflation. It will not be difficult for anyone to go to this site and see for themselves all the graphs on the Consumer Price Index, core indices, a description of the methodology for calculating inflation. In particular, in Belarus, literally everything is presented in detail by month on the website of the Ministry of Statistics. All prices are indicated by sections, in rubles, in separate Excel files. For example, there is a section called Seasonal Prices for Fruit and Vegetable Products, or a section called Industrial Goods, a section called Services. And the prices of goods and services for different months are recorded in separate files. Everyone can open and recalculate them themselves. Yes, there are goods for which prices have increased significantly, above the average inflation, but there are also many goods for which prices have remained virtually unchanged or even decreased. For example, in Belarus, prices have fallen for tables, furniture, some types of clothing. But the country does not matter. Looking at the consumer basket offered by your statistical agency or your central bank, you yourself can determine to what extent this basket corresponds to your personal consumer basket. Most often, of course, it does not correspond. You rarely buy a desk or furniture, for example, 2 to 3 times during your life, but, for example, potatoes, carrots, bread or meat, regularly. And you may have a false belief that the inflation rate is falsified. In fact, this is not so. You can open the archive and check for yourself how the Consumer Price Index was calculated, the core inflation, what specific goods were compared. You can see the prices of these goods. In fact, cognitive errors of distortion prevent us from adequately perceiving reality. For example, if we are saving money to buy a house or an apartment, then we should not be interested in inflation on potatoes, sausages, or hairdressing services. After all, we still plan to spend on something specific and we are interested in how much the prices of our desired goods have increased this year. For you personally, only the inflation that reflects the consumer basket of your family is important. It can really differ greatly from the official statistics. For example, in 2024, sugar prices in Belarus either remained the same or even decreased, that is, deflation occurred. But personally, this does not benefit me at all, since my family and I try not to consume sugar, since it is harmful to health. Obviously, those who plan to buy an apartment save money for this. Seeing that real estate in Belarus has increased in price by about 20% in 2024, we will, of course, be very annoyed, upset by this fact. Information about inflation of 7 to 8% will cause us aggression and a desire to spit in the face of the person who will talk about such low general inflation. Approximately the same story is happening in our life. We see the price increase of our favorite goods and services, what is included in our basket. We see a significant increase in the average check in the supermarket. But we forget that the average figure takes into account, for example, the prices of asphalt paving, many industrial goods, furniture, or some items of clothing, the prices of which have even decreased. And on average, we get information that is distorted for our brain. Our psyche refuses to perceive reality. We want to compare prices not for comparable goods, but for their improved analogs. For example, when we talk about the price of a smartphone, the same new iPhone, we usually want to buy the latest model, with improved functions, a modern one. But we are comparing with the price of a more outdated iPhone model, the one we are using now. For example, we once bought an iPhone 10, and now we decided to buy an iPhone 14 and it seems to us that it has become much more expensive. But it would be more correct to compare not with the 14th, but with the same iPhone 10. How much does it cost today? Of course, cheaper than it cost then, several years ago, when we bought it. Prices for comparable household appliances usually decrease, rather than increase. But our brain is more comfortable comparing how much we paid for a new phone then and today. It seems to throw out of memory that this cannot be compared. Today it is a completely different product. It is correct to compare the same models, which is what official statistics do. This is also why official inflation is slightly, as if artificially, underestimated compared to our expectations and ideas. I predict that in the comments under this video you will probably write your angry comments. We are being deceived, inflation is deliberately understated. For such people, I simply suggest creating a personal table in a simple Excel program, where it is convenient to enter prices for goods and services from your personal consumer basket, and calculate your own inflation. I have been keeping such a table for more than 10 years. It turned out that my personal inflation, of course, is higher than the official one, but there is still a correlation. That is, the differences in dynamics are not significant, which means that for assessing trends, for forming an overall picture, the officially announced inflation is quite suitable for us. For any person or private investor, it is important to understand general trends, and not specific numbers. It is important to evaluate and control the success or failure of your investments. Do my investments beat the average inflation in the country? And my personal inflation? Simple questions. I do not touch on complex things. I do not consider demand pull inflation and supply pull inflation in this video. These are completely different types of inflation. Here is only simple information that is understandable to ordinary people, not economists. I suggest that all doubters visit the official websites of statistical agencies and central banks in your countries, where everything is described in great detail. All prices are indicated for all periods, from children's toys and hosiery to the price of milk, eggs, potatoes, transport prices, and so on. And then argue in the comments, prove that I am wrong. I repeat, I am not defending anyone and I have no conflict of interest. When assessing inflation, do not forget to clarify what is included in the consumer basket, the calculation methodology. Rely only on facts, and not on emotions and psychological traps of your consciousness. Cognitive errors often let us down and force us to make wrong decisions in life. These are my thoughts, friends. Subscribe to this channel. There will be much more useful and interesting stuff on it. Thank you for your attention. I wish you good health, prosperity, success in all your endeavors. And until next time.